Eisenhower's final order meant to prevent a future war. It was delivered without urgency, almost casually. No crisis forced it. No enemy demanded it. And that is what made it so dangerous to ignore. To understand Dwight Eisenhower's final months as president, we must look past a calm farewell and into a decision shaped by everything he had seen. Eisenhower was not guessing about war. He had lived inside it. He had watched momentum overpower reason, and he knew how easily systems designed for defense could drift toward inevitability. By the end of his presidency, the world was armed beyond comprehension. Nuclear weapons were no longer rare. They were integrated into doctrine, planning, and assumption. The Cold War was not loud. It was constant, and Eisenhower understood that permanence was the true threat. Publicly, he appeared steady, confident, almost relaxed. Privately, his concerns sharpened. He saw how power had begun to operate independently of wisdom, how preparation justified expansion, how fear rewarded speed. The machinery of war no longer waited for intention. It waited for opportunity. Eisenhower believed the presidency had crossed a threshold. Authority was now capable of triggering annihilation without deliberation. That terrified him more than any adversary, not because leaders were malicious, but because systems were efficient. And efficiency, without restraint, eliminates pause. The final order he shaped was not a treaty or withdrawal. It was structural, procedural, designed to slow decisions rather than accelerate them. Eisenhower believed survival depended on friction, on obstacles that forced reflection, on time inserted where instinct demanded speed. He knew this choice would not be celebrated. It lacked drama. It offered no visible victory, but it carried a deeper intention: to protect the future from leaders who might feel pressure he had resisted, to ensure that power could not outrun judgment. This was the beginning of Eisenhower's last act as president, a quiet attempt to limit catastrophe before it had a chance to arrive, a recognition that the greatest danger was not attack, but automatic response. The order did not make headlines, but it was meant to shape every moment that followed, because Eisenhower understood something history often forgets. The most important decisions are sometimes the ones made when nothing is happening yet. The logic behind the order was born from experience, not theory, not optimism, memory. Eisenhower had watched wars begin without intention, small movements misread, signals misinterpreted, plans activated because they existed. Now those same patterns were paired with weapons that erased cities in minutes. The margin for error had collapsed. Inside the government, speed was praised. Readiness was rewarded. Systems were designed to respond instantly. Eisenhower saw the danger clearly. When reaction becomes automatic, responsibility disappears. No one decides. Everyone executes. The order he shaped disrupted that momentum. It inserted layers of approval. It slowed chains of command. It required confirmation where habit demanded action. To some, it looked inefficient. To Eisenhower, inefficiency was survival. Advisors warned him of risk. Delay could invite attack. Friction could paralyze response. Eisenhower listened, then held firm. He believed the greater risk was not hesitation. It was inevitability. A world where war began because no one stopped it in time. This created tension inside the presidency. Military planners preferred clarity. Politicians preferred strength. Eisenhower preferred restraint disguised as structure. He did not argue morality. He argued control. Systems must serve judgment, not replace it. The emotional conflict deepened here. Eisenhower understood that future leaders might resent the limits he imposed. They might see them as weakness. He accepted that. He believed leadership sometimes required protecting others from their worst instincts. This was not about trusting enemies. It was about distrusting momentum. The order quietly reshaped authority. It forced pause into moments where seconds mattered. It made catastrophe harder to reach, not impossible, but slower. And in that delay lived hope. Eisenhower knew he would not be there to enforce it. The future would decide whether it endured. The conflict reached its peak as Eisenhower prepared to leave, because restraint without authority is fragile. As his term neared its end, Eisenhower worried less about enemies and more about successors. He had seen how crises compress time, how fear narrows choice, how leaders under pressure search for speed, not wisdom. The structures he put in place would be tested by moments he could not predict. Internally, debate intensified. Some officials viewed the order as an obstacle. They argued that modern war required instant reaction. That delay could mean defeat. Eisenhower understood the argument. He also understood its flaw. Instant reaction assumes perfect information. War never provides it. This was the emotional zenith of Eisenhower's presidency. Not a standoff with an adversary, but a confrontation with the future. He knew that once he left office, control would pass to leaders who had not lived through global war the way he had. Leaders shaped by theory rather than memory. Eisenhower felt the loneliness of foresight. He could not force future restraint. He could only design conditions that made recklessness harder. The presidency, for all its power, could not guarantee wisdom beyond its term. He watched as weapons grew faster, systems more complex, and decisions more compressed. The order stood as a quiet counterweight, a reminder embedded in procedure. Stop, verify, consider, even when fear demands action. This was not hesitation. It was resistance to inevitability. Eisenhower understood that if war ever came, leaders would say it was unavoidable. His goal was to make that claim harder to believe, to ensure that catastrophe could never arrive without multiple chances to stop it. The conflict was never resolved. It was deferred, and deferral, in an age of annihilation, was itself an achievement. The resolution came not with certainty, but with warning. In his final address, Eisenhower chose not to celebrate. He cautioned. He spoke of power drifting beyond control, of systems that grow until they demand justification through use, of a future where decisions could be shaped more by momentum than wisdom. The order he left behind was part of that warning, a final attempt to slow a world that was learning to move too fast. He did not claim it would prevent war forever. He believed nothing could. He believed only that it might buy time. Eisenhower's story matters because it reframed strength. True power, he believed, was not the ability to act instantly. It was the ability to wait, to question, to resist pressure even when authority made action possible. The presidency he left behind was more dangerous than the one he inherited, but it was also more conscious of that danger. He had injected humility into a system that rewarded certainty, friction into a process that prized speed. History often remembers Eisenhower as calm and distant. It should also remember him as cautious and deliberate, a leader who understood that survival depended not on dominance, but on discipline. The final order did not end conflict. It made catastrophe less automatic. And sometimes that is the most a president can do. Eisenhower